about it. You don't think like you think when it comes to the divorce rate and relationships and men and women and things like that, you think the way that we structure relationships today as people is fundamentally wrong? You think?
as statistics will show.
Hmm.
And to the extent that we want to persist in these lingering mythologies and the manner by which humans couple,
Hmm.
which itself begs the question, right? That's a presumption right off the bat. I would just say that there might be a different way to do things such that you didn't present men and women as adversaries joining together in a union where you're competing to see who can sacrifice the most the longest. It's such a weird prescription for the way we order society
Hmm.
that the people with whom you're most honest are the ones you meet up with, for example, in a bar,
Right.
a beautiful
A
one like
place like
this,
this, yes.
as opposed to the home that you create with someone with whom, at least ostensibly, you're going to bring life onto the planet.
Yeah.
It's wild.
So you describe. There's a few things I want to say. You described it as lingering fantasies. What do you mean by lingering fantasies?
Well, a lot of this does come from,
Fairy tale. What do you mean?
sure, right? It comes from the way we, the modes of control by which society previously ordered itself.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to the extent that there's a nuclear family, remember that that is itself a construct in the at the very beginning of what we know to be humanity.
Right.
You didn't have
Family
marriage.
unit.
You
Right.
didn't
Yeah.
have nuclear families
Yeah.
that were to the exclusion of all other relationships, making that primal
Yeah.
in a tribe or an aggregation of people. So I'm not maybe an expert on why that exists, for what purpose that exists. I just know that it doesn't seem to have as much utility now as it did at one time
Mm.
when gender roles were fundamentally unequal, and you had, for example, religious institutions as the cornerstone or the keystone of your social ordering. I just think that there very clearly is a demand for a completely different way of perceiving the manner by which human beings order themselves. And every time I hear an alternative, the fact that you can put a name to it means that it is inevitably going to collapse. Like the term is like you either have monogamy
Or
or
polygamy.
polyamory.
Right. Yeah.
Polyamory sounds just as dumb to me.
Okay.
If you're trying to create different rule structures, I mean, that's, some of those rules will work for some
Mm.
people
Okay. Okay. Okay.
and they won't work for other people. And I think the real issue is that to the extent that we still require rules extended to us and an unwillingness to adapt and accommodate different lifestyles is why you have so much discord,
Mm.
because everyone's conception of what the world should look like will be different, and if you're trying to exert your will on other people, there's going to be pushback.
So it's not what rules there are; it's that there are rules when it comes to relationships.
Just show me any rule and I'll
Mm.
show you a rule that will be broken.
Right. Or an exception to the rule.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think you see certain people who can transcend those rules. For example, being self-employed.
Mm.
There's a lot that I can say
Right.
that I would not otherwise be able to say.
Right.
I acknowledge a freedom of maneuver that also comes, by the way, from, at least in this society, my melanin content. I'm aware of that.
Mm.
Like, I know that one of the reasons I do go so hard in the paint online, speaking my mind, is because I know I'm one of the few people who has been given the privilege of immunity from some consequence.
Mm-hmm.
And so I might as well be a voice for those that are not positioned to shake the status quo because they so depend on it
Mm.
financially, socially.
Yeah.
And you see that, by the way, in the number of people who will send me messages or who will approach me on the street and beseech me not to share their identities, but ask me to
Share a
pass.
message.
Exactly.
Yes. Yes. Interesting. The last thing I want to ask about relationships, just because we brought it up, you described relationships as we do it today as almost like a competition for who can sacrifice the most between each other when they enter into it. Is that actually what you believe a relationship is? And yeah, just tell me more about that in general.
It just depends. I mean, I think that if, for example, if you are constitutionally wired to devote yourself to someone in sickness and in health till death do you part with no extramarital excursions,
Right.
then this system works for you perfectly. If that's not your bag, then you're basically white
You're done
knuckling
for.
life.
Yeah, you're done for.
And I just think it's very strange because by being honest, for example, about who I am, my relationships with women have been very healthy.
Mm.
Like I may not necessarily be the person that a woman with whom I have some sort of romantic fascination wants to spend the rest of her life in a construct that works for her.
Right.
But at least there's no animus. At least, because I've been honest, there's almost a kind of sense of safety there. And I would just that I jokingly declare myself to be a problematic bachelor only to the extent that I'm problematic to what we believe a person should be.
To the societal norm.
To the societal norm.
Right.
But one thing I'll just say is by pronouncing that I'm an eternal bachelor, I've had actually really healthy relationships with partners
Right.
and with friends. And it's just easier to keep track of your whereabouts when you don't feel you got to lie about them.
100%. Yeah. And people respect transparency. So.
And they're desperate for it.
Mm.
I mean, remember, one of the things that we know about people in general, but stereotypically this is attributed most to women, is that they are fascinating detectives. And when they want to figure out where you are digitally, they will do so.
Right.
You know what? Like when they don't feel that they need to start diving into your dirty, they can relax. And you start, having a real conversation with people. It may be that you have to give up certain things you might want, right? Like the exclusivity of someone's attention.
Right.
But once you can come to that, I mean, I just can't. I can't imagine. Like, I've tried, man.
The whole like putting up a facade almost.
You got one life to live.
Right.
Let your freak flag fly.
That's your philosophy. Let your freak flag fly.
Because it's gonna fly anyway.
Right.
What
right.
The difference is whether you let it fly as like the colors of your own flag or whether you let someone else interpret it as a red flag.
Right.
Those are the only two options.
Yeah, my uncle, a few uncles that I'm pretty close with, they always say, whatever you're gonna do, like relationship wise, like just be honest. Whether you're gonna do it in the traditional way that you said, or whether you just want to date around and have, a bunch of girl friends, like just be transparent. And the people who do want to be on board will be on board, and the people who don't want to be on board won't be on board.
Can you imagine the type of sociopath who would say, "Oh, I don't need someone to be honest with me. I just need them to be cute or wealthy." Or it's like, actually, that means you're living in someone else's constructed reality. I'm not doing that. I'm certainly not gonna take responsibility for having erected this false existence for someone that then comes crumbling down. Like,
and then that's your fault.
It's 100%. By the way, I mean, listen, I made my mistakes. I learned this from my own failures.
Right.
And my own deficiencies. Yeah. And it was like, I don't have the ability to walk around with the guilt. Remember, if you end up being the victim, there is a path forward because you can acknowledge that it was like not your fault. But if you are the perpetrator, I mean,
you got to live with that.
You got to live with that.
Yeah.
That sucks.
Yeah.
You'll figure all that out. I got a couple decades on you.
You're right. To get into what I originally wanted to talk about, so could you tell us, well, first of all, who am I here with? Tell us your name, please.
My name is Jesse Summer.
Yeah.
You, if you know me at all, almost assuredly know me through the Rage Bait, by which I've established the office of the Sheriff of Lark Street.
Right. Rage Bait. I'm surprised. How old are you?
43.
43-year-olds use Rage Bait?
Once I discovered its utility, I built a company off of rage baiting.
Yes.
I find that with praise and compliments, it doesn't push your message.
Mm-hmm.
But when you antagonize people, they end up becoming your involuntarily proselytizers.
Okay.
And when they push your message out, it actually ends up resonating with people who, in fact, don't necessarily disagree, and then they will find me of their own accord.
Interesting.
And I honestly, I mean, frankly, the proof in that pudding is the fact that President Trump won the White
Right.
House twice by getting people to hate him.
Yeah. Super duper rage bait podcast.
It's brilliant.
Yeah, he went on a
It's
podcast tour. Yeah.
masterful.
Yeah. Yeah. I people say that he's the podcast president or the
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, that almost on some level that misses the mark, which
Mm.
is to say that he's just the president of the time and space. I mean, prior to Donald Trump's example, we had Barack Obama. That was
Right.
before your time, but
Yeah.
the way he utilized social media to reach me, newly emergent on the what at the time was a nascent Facebook platform, um, this was someone who was speaking to me and doing so in the only channels through which I was getting at the time any
Right.
type of social acclamation.
Yep. Yep. Reaching people where they are rather than trying to use the old methods.
It's just wild that
Yeah.
it took a friggin' 80-year-old man to do it so successful.
Right.
But I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I definitely looked at it and I was like, the guy gets more and more powerful. The more people talk about him,
Good or
and
bad.
and I at this point I don't even know if you can qualify it as such.
Mm.
It's just attention, because the manner of attention meets people so differently, and and you just kind of become this empty vessel through which people can associate or project is probably a better word.
Yeah.
Project their own hopes, dreams, fears,
Right.
need for revenge,
Right.
and it's all tonal.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I try to not invest too much in external things like that. Like politics is important. Don't get it twisted. Politics is very important, but I don't know. I pay attention, but I don't get like I see a lot of people, like you said, projecting either a bunch of negatives or positives onto a figure that they've never met, or that they don't know too much about. So, what do you think about that?
I think you're exactly right. And let me wrap up everything you're saying by making this point. There is not a title associated with an office in the city or county of Albany that is more powerful than the made-up moniker Sheriff of Lark Street.
There's no real title that's more powerful than the made-up title of the Sheriff of Lark Street.
I'd be taking a demotion.
Wow.
Were I ultimately,
if you were the mayor of Albany.
I mean, I'd be a step down,
Right.
because all of a sudden now I become this tangible thing that people can
Right.
can hate
Right.
or love
Right.
for reasons totally external to what I am.
And they have all these rules too.
There's rules, and then there's constituencies. I think what is also interesting is that whether you talk about Barack Obama or Donald Trump, again, using kind of our most visible political figures, what gave them freedom of maneuver was the fact that they built a movement around themselves. So it wasn't the Democratic Party, it was Obama for America. It wasn't the Republican Party, it was Make America Great Again.
Right,
these movements that propelled them into a place of let's just say like societal immunity, where they were able to say what they wanted to say because they had a receptive audience. Beyond that, man, I mean, political offices are just the means by which money is dispersed among constituencies.
That's a great conversation I could get into, but for the sake of my storage space, could you tell us where we're at right now, please?
This is the New Scotland Spirits tasting room. It's my love note to the city of Albany.
Yep.
A lot of what you're seeing was kind of, I created this rough idea of a sketch, and one of my business partners, Rosa Maria Lupino, she kind of created the aesthetic here. And it's a speakeasy vibe designed to recall some of Albany's storied and grandiose past, about 100 years ago.
Okay.
And Albany there have been, waves and troughs in its trajectory, but that was a period where at least there's a lot of color. And I wanted to kind of recall that, because there was a period where the city of Albany was something that demanded a recognition of one, pride, but also respect. For example, I think it's the 1754 Albany Plan of Union that was the conceptual stitching together of the colonies. A lot of what we know to be America today finds its roots in a document that Ben Franklin authored here. And I think that's pretty cool. So Albany will find its way back. And to me, this is like this is one little step in that that path forward.
So if you could give, you sort of answered a lot of it, but if you could give us a summary, right? What upstate New York business do you run, and who are you?
Yes. So I own New Scotland Spirits, which is
In Albany, New York.
in Albany, New York.
On what street?
This is, I mean, Lark Street, but
Right.
also State Street, like
Right.
two of the most storied streets in the city.
Right.
I mean, this to me is like,
The spot.
it's ground zero for where I develop my ego.
Yeah.
I mean, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Like,
Are you famous or are you notorious, would you say? Or infamous? Which one would you say?
yeah, it very much depends on whom you ask. I will say that if you gave me one of two options,
Yeah.
I'd say infamy.
Okay.
But what are you going to do with fame? That fame is fleeting.
Okay.
Once you're hated, you can do anything.
You believe that for real?
Player.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it this way. Politicians do everything they can to be loved and ended up being hated, right? I've done everything I can to be hated and ended up being loved. Ergo, this
Crazy.
guy's interviewing, yeah.
Right. And here we are. So yeah, no, tell us, again, what upstate New York business do you run and who are you? Give us.
So New Scotland Spirits is a distilling outfit. It was the brainchild of me, principally, but a few other people who wanted to save my hometown of New Scotland, which is a town just southwest of the city of Albany. Village of Voorheesville is the sole incorporated village in that town. You've perhaps heard of that. The town of New Scotland was undergoing a bunch of development pressure. I wanted to ensure that we could maintain our rural environment, our agrarian traditions, and what better way to do that than to turn your farm fieldage into grain cultivation operations that we then distill into whiskey. So, and vodka and gin, spirits, distilled spirits. It's about bringing an agritourism component to Albany County and making people recognize that there is a value to your acreage beyond just becoming a paved parking lot. Fields, forests. I love living in the city, but I also am cognizant of the degree to which having your woods, your forests, your trees, that's really critical. You need those spaces. And on some level, humanity is now at the point where we either are going to decide that everything becomes pavement, everything becomes digital, or that we are going to be the stewards of what remaining environmental resources we have. I am not some big environmentalist. I'm just calling a spade a spade. Like, do you enjoy the shade afforded by a tree? Okay,
Right.
Well, then you're on the same page as am I.
And how did you start this tasting room?
The tasting room was a function of the fact that people needed a tangible way to interact with the brand beyond just the consumption of an addictive intoxicant.
Okay.
Right? Like, you had to kind of, hide on some level the fact that alcohol, if you take it to its logical extension, is like a social scourge.
Okay.
Scourge. But this ends up, there's a certain grandeur to this, and it is where people aggregate. There is not yet a substance or cultural practice that rivals bars, taverns, places where you can drink alcohol in terms of creating connection. You're just not getting the same thing dicking around online. This is where you still have a chance of meeting people in a manner that strips out all of the pageantry, I guess.
What would you say people love most about this place when they
Me.
come here? You?
I think.
By far.
But that's also because, like, I don't have an ability to step outside of myself to acknowledge what it would be that other people like. Some people might love the aesthetic.
Okay.
Some people might love the product.
Right.
Some people might like the fact that we have these dynamic bartenders.
Right.
I choose to interpret any patronage here as a direct direct indication that I'm loved.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
It's just an easier way for a narcissist to go through life.
Okay. And what are some of the best, I don't want to say drinks, but what are some of the best experiences people have when they come here? You said socialization, meeting people.
Yeah, socialization. I mean, it's also, you can kind of see this is a place where you can make it yours. We've had weddings here, 3 of them.
Wow.
And there's a reason for that. It's cozy. If you think about way before your time, there was a show called Cheers. And I know that you at least understand the legend that derives from it, which is people walk into a bar and they know everybody.
Okay.
And everybody famously knows your name.
Okay.
And you sit at the bar and you talk. This is literally, it's a tasting room in every sense of the word. It is one room. And when people come in here, they know everyone because they have to talk, they have to socialize. And right there is our general manager.
Yeah.
That's our head bartender, Neil. What up?
What's
Come
up?
on in.
Hey, I was hoping to slide in here late without being detected.
Jasmine Ziki,
I got some
Nice to meet you,
Neil.
Yeah. Nice to meet you, Neil.
And interestingly enough, as much as I will insist, and adamantly so, that I'm the draw here, the reality is that his approach to running this place has revolutionized why people come here and the tenor of conversation. When you are a bartender, if you're going to be effective and successful at it, you have to be the person who's performing. And
True.
Neil steps
True.
into your classic, like, old school barkeep who knows everything about your family, who actually listens to you or pretends to do so, and can recall a lot of information to make you feel special. Like,
Wow.
this is your home away from home.
Yeah.
That's the best thing about a bar, and I think we've fucking nailed it here.
Yeah. So, how should New Scotland Spirits? Is that the best way to refer to it?
New Scotland Spirits, because remember, it's spirits from the town of New Scotland.
Right.
And I will just point out, and I can send you a link because I think you will appreciate this.
Okay.
We leveraged that name because there was an organization called the Scotch Whisky Association that I knew I could similarly rage bait into giving us notoriety by emphasizing that we were a product of New Scotland, and all they would hear was Scotland. They need to protect that IP and the property of Scotch. And sure enough, when they initiated suit against us, it was our first exposure before we even had any product on the market, thereby insulating us from a charge of or a lawsuit where we could get hit with penalty for damages because we had no commercial product on the market yet. And so that was almost 10 years ago how we first became notorious without even having a product on the market yet, which is notable because when it comes to whiskey specifically, as distinct from beer or cider or even vodka or gin, whiskey exists years down the road. Our youngest whiskey has been aging in a barrel for 5 years. So most of what we have here, for example, our 8-year whiskey, that's a third of your life.
Yeah.
So a third of your life. We put that whiskey into barrels.
Wow.
And aging it ever
That's
since.
crazy.
So it's a very interesting thing of, you have to consider what the future will be, and you take that risk. When I put that spirit into the barrels, of course, I had no idea that your generation would decide to stop drinking.
True. Yeah.
Which has been, we've weathered that storm, but your insistence on being healthy and productive in the workforce is really cutting into my bottom.